everyone, my name's Lily and I'm the book reviewer behind Utopia State of Mind, and today I'm going to be sharing my thoughts on The Night Circus, which I finally read. I had not heard anything about The Night Circus. Let me just give you my background knowledge before going into The Night Circus. I got the Starless Sea actually in 2019 from a book subscription box, and I haven't read it. But when I decided I was thinking about picking it up, I kind of was like, hey, everybody on the internet, do you think I should read The Night Circus first or The Starless Sea? And people did recommend The Night Circus first. So then I actually got a copy of it for my birthday years ago. And then when I was at a random secondhand sale, I also then found this one, which I couldn't resist that it had sprayed edges, but it also has these really fun kind of things in there. So I couldn't resist this one. So I actually have two copies of The Night Circus. But I finally read it because I wanted to bring you another one of my kind of like, is this worth the hype video? So we're going to be chatting about The Night Circus today. I did not really know what to expect, except that since The Night Circus came out in 2011, I have read a ton of different circus books, and I have not liked a lot of them. So I was really, really wary going into The Night Circus. If you had asked me in 2019 what my thoughts were, my thoughts would be like, oh, I want to read this book, but I don't have any thoughts about magical circuses. And now in 2025, I thought, well, I actually have read a lot of magical circus books and have been disappointed by a fair amount of them. So what is this going to give me? I, though, enjoyed this one a lot more than I thought I would, considering that the bar was very, very low, just because the whole idea of a traveling magical circus, I've never been to a circus, so I don't have enough frame of reference for this. But I wanted to just share my thoughts, and I think what I really want to talk about first is the characters, which I think were the strongest element. In general, to me, The Night Circus felt a little bit, it felt like one of those whimsical adult fantasy journeys. It's weird because when I was thinking about it, at various points I was kind of like, where is this going to go? What is going to happen? And then other points I was so involved in the story. So it's weird because if you would ask me, let's just say halfway through, how I was thinking, I'd be like, yeah, I'm liking it, but I don't know, it could be a little bit slow. I wasn't really ever sure how I felt about The Night Circus until I finished it. And I think that it takes a little bit for it to come together. But I think what I really initially loved the most about The Night Circus is that we don't revere this magic. I think in a lot of kind of circus books, or a lot of books in general in the fantasy genre, everybody loves the magic and they're super, super happy to meet magicians. And while there are costs, there aren't the necessary cruelty within magic, I suppose. I don't necessarily feel like there's a ton of explicit conversations about the cost of magic here. I do think that the world building, the rules of the world of the magic is pretty loose. I would say that as someone who really enjoys rules and really enjoys rules and magic, and also this explicit kind of cost in magic, I will say that this is a little bit more kind of vibe, more whimsical, more magical than kind of like this is the way that the world works. What I liked the most initially on in The Night Circus was how there is a very explicit connection between the cruelty, the exploitation, and the manipulative nature that magic can hold. I liked that it is talked about at the very beginning because I think we have this idea of magical circuses and as circuses in general being these kinds of fun environments of wonder and miracles and illusions and whatnot. And I feel like very, very early on, Erin Morgenstern was kind of like, no, these things may have magic, these things may be these experiences for other people, but the people who work here, the people who create these, it's not like that for them. So that's one of the first things that I really liked and enjoyed in The Night Circus. And then we will get to the characters. I do think that I wish that some of the characters had a little bit more depth. This one is not strictly kind of one POV throughout it. It's more of like an omniscient third perspective in which we have chapters where we see other characters' perspectives and what's happening in their lives and their minds. And I did enjoy that. But I did think it helped with the side character creation, the side character development. But I do think that characters who didn't get that, to me, felt very sparse. In general, the Night Circus is probably good for people who really like this idea of these slow threads and these slow plots kind of slowly coming together in a way that almost feels like magic, but almost feels like the strings are tightening, the noose is tightening, and that the characters don't know it themselves, but we know it because we're this omniscient perspective. So we see all these characters, all these people slowly kind of creep, slowly come closer and closer together. And I think that if you like books like that, that is entirely 100% the way that the Night Circus is. So I would say that you'd probably enjoy that a lot. For me, those can be kind of hit and miss. It worked in the Night Circus, but I have read other books where that slowly coming togetherness is too slow and it doesn't come together fast enough, and then I don't like it. To talk about the main characters, the two main characters, I enjoyed them, but honestly, to me, it wasn't even necessarily about the characters. I'm a huge character reader. I would say that, first of all, I'm a theme reader. Then I'm a character reader. Then I'm a story reader. And then I'm maybe a world reader. A world premise and theme are very high for me, but kind of like the atmospheric quality of the world. As someone who's with aphantasia, it just isn't necessarily the thing that I'm reading for. So that's the tier list of things. And I would say thematically, the strongest theme is this theme of manipulation. It has this idea of the games, because there's this competition between these two characters, and it has those kinds of things, but I wouldn't say that the themes are particularly developed in that sense throughout the book. I think that the last denouement, or the last action point, is where these themes are coming together more, but I wouldn't say it's something where they're continually discussed. And so then if we move on to characters, I've already talked about side characters, but main character wise, I enjoyed them, but I felt like as characters, they needed a little bit more, I wouldn't say quirks, but they needed a little bit more for me to kind of adoringly love them. I enjoyed them, but I would say that I mostly read The Night Circus for story, which I know is number 3 on my tier list, but such as such. I was really intrigued to see how this was going to go down. I do think that considering how it did go down and considering the ending felt a little bit rushed, considering how much had been going into the book to get it to this way. I really liked the way that it came together. And for me, I guess the overall writing structure and plot structure and the way that it interacted with the story, that was my favorite element for this. So I would say maybe that's on, as I said, maybe my 3rd-ish, 4th-ish place, I guess, in terms of what I'm looking for and what I'm reading for in a story. But I did enjoy it. It didn't let me down in the sense where I felt like the hype was too real. I do think that maybe in 2011, this would have hit way different, because in 2011, I think the state of fantasy was so much different, just incredibly different in terms of the stories that were coming out and everything like that. So I can see why in 2011, this was such a sensation. As I said, though, I've read a lot of Magical Circus books since then. And so I do think that now is a different product of time than it was in 2011. And so maybe that's part of why some of the magic is different. Some of the magic has faded a little bit in terms of the genre as a whole. But I would say that ultimately the hype, when I say the hype is real, I feel like you're going to think that I also have this kind of like 5-star amazing, 100% worth it. I would say that the hype isn't, I would say that I'm not going to start necessarily trying to get you all to come onto the bandwagon for me with the Night Circus. But I would say that if you've heard about the Night Circus and you don't know if you should pick it up, and you like some of the things I've been talking about, then definitely pick it up. I don't think that it was a bad book. I don't think it was necessarily my favorite book of all time, but I don't think that it disappointed me in that sense in terms of the hype. And so that's what I wanted to talk about when I talked about the Night Circus for you all today. There are a lot of kind of super, super hype books that I've missed the boat on. that I'm kind of going to try to read for you all eventually. But as I said, there were 2 copies of this on my shelf, and so I had to read it as one of the top ones for that, because then I can potentially decide what I want to do now with the 2 copies of this book. I already know that I'm going to get rid of the other paperback copy. It was very short and squat and just made reading very hard. To be fair, I didn't necessarily read this one either. I got a copy from my library, but this one is gorgeous. And so if I keep any of them, I'll definitely keep this one with the ribbon bookmark. And I do think that it makes my top 10 favorite circus books, like my favorite magical traveling circus books, and favorite circus books, I guess, in general. Definitely in top 10. Not top 3, but definitely in top 10. And so, yeah, I wanted to chat about that with you all today. Let me know down below what your thoughts are about the Night Circus, and if you read it in 2011, let me know how you felt. And I hope you have a really great rest of your reading day, week, month, and year. And I will see you next video. Bye!